Leave now. Don't say a word. That whisper, sharp as broken glass, was all I heard before my coworker vanished into the crowd outside the conference room. He didn't even look back. Just those 4 words, said with a calm urgency that made my stomach drop. And for reasons I still can't fully explain, I listened. I closed my laptop, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out of the building like a man abandoning his own execution. If I hadn't, I would have been the one blamed for the collapse of a $200,000 project. I would have lost my job, my reputation, and probably my sanity. But because of that whisper, I'm here telling you this story. I need you to understand something before we go further. I'm not the kind of person who trusts easily. I've been burned too many times in corporate hellscapes. Managers stealing credit, clients rewriting history, colleagues throwing me under the bus. If survival in the office is about paranoia, then I was already a seasoned veteran. So when he said it, leave now, my first instinct was suspicion. Was this some kind of setup? Was he trying to push me into making a scene? But then I saw his eyes. Not panic, not fear, just certainty. He knew something I didn't. We'd been working together for almost a year on a system migration project that was supposed to modernize an entire client infrastructure. Think endless spreadsheets of licenses, fragile dependencies no one documented properly, vendors ghosting us until invoices cleared. A monster of a project, bleeding money by the day, and somehow we had kept it alive. Barely. I was the lead analyst, the one the client trusted to translate technical chaos into deliverables. He was my backup, a quiet guy, sharp as a razor when he spoke, but usually invisible in meetings. Not a friend, not really. Just the kind of coworker you nod at in the hallway and occasionally share a coffee with when the vending machine eats your dollar. But he was always watching, always catching details nobody else noticed. And apparently he just noticed something that could ruin us both. I walked out into the parking lot, the late afternoon sun bouncing off the glass towers around me. My hands were clammy. My mind was already racing. Inside, the executive status meeting was beginning. The VP of Operations, our project sponsor, and most importantly, our manager, the one person who seemed to take pleasure in tightening the noose around my neck. She was notorious for reframing narratives, which is corporate speak, for rewriting the past to make herself look like a hero. I'd been her target before. The difference now was that there was real money on the line. $200,000 worth? I remember the exact moment I realized this wasn't just paranoia. My phone buzzed, a message from him. Do not answer calls. Do not check email. Trust me. My pulse hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the glass doors of the building like they were about to burst open with smoke and sirens. My rational brain told me to go back inside, to face whatever storm was brewing, to prove I had nothing to hide. But another part of me, the part that had survived too many near misses, told me to wait, to trust that if he'd risked whispering those words, he had a damn good reason. So I waited. Minutes dragged into an hour. I watched employees file out for the day, their faces unreadable, clutching laptops and coffee cups. Nobody looked like they'd just witnessed a professional execution. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just dodged something fatal. When he finally called, his voice was low but steady. You need to meet me. Not here. Not home. Somewhere neutral. I'll send you the location. Neutral? I asked, my voice cracking despite myself. Yeah, he said. You were about to get burned alive in there, and I can prove it. That's when I knew this wasn't just office politics. This was survival. If you've ever worked on a strategic initiative, you know how the word strategic usually means chaotic. That was us. On paper, our $200,000 project was a golden goose, upgrading a client's entire infrastructure from a mess of outdated servers and licensing nightmares into a sleek, compliant, modern system. It was supposed to be the kind of portfolio win executives brag about at conferences. In reality, it was duct tape and caffeine holding together 20 years of technical debt. Every week was a new fire. Vendors delivered half-finished updates. The client's finance department kept revising the budget. And our internal manager, let's call her Diane, treated the whole thing like a personal performance stage. She wasn't interested in solving problems. She was interested in being seen solving problems. If that meant inventing villains, rewriting timelines, or tossing her own team into the fire, so be it. I had seen her do it to others. A QA lead blamed for inefficiency when Diane had cut half his testing hours. A systems engineer quietly transferred after she claimed his attitude delayed milestones. It was always the same story. Diane walked away looking decisive, while someone else carried the blame. I should have seen it coming. At first, the red flags seemed small. She canceled stand-ups, claiming they were a waste of executive time, but then blindsided us in client calls with questions we hadn't had a chance to discuss. She demanded new dashboards every week, changing metrics midstream, then berated us for inconsistent reporting. And she had a habit of sending emails at 11:59 p.m., then referencing them in 8 a.m. meetings as if silence overnight equaled guilt. Still, we pushed forward. The client's deadline was brutal. 6 months, no extensions. Every hour counted. My coworker and I spent nights cross-checking dependencies, untangling licensing agreements, and building what was basically a parallel system of truth. Because Diane's official documentation was full of convenient gaps. We weren't trying to undermine her, we were just trying to survive. Then came the cost-saving initiative. One Monday, Diane waltzed into the war room with a glossy presentation. She'd identified opportunities to save $40,000 by streamlining processes. Translation, cutting testing phases, merging environments, and fast-tracking client approvals. On the slides, it looked efficient. In reality, it was suicide. I raised my hand during the presentation. If we cut regression testing, we're risking undetected failures in production. She gave me that thin smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. You worry too much. The client wants results, not excuses. My coworker stayed silent, scribbling notes in his meticulous handwriting. Later, he slid the notebook across the desk to me when Diane wasn't looking. On the page, he'd written one word in block letters. Trap. I didn't want to believe it, but he was right. 2 weeks later, Diane introduced a change request. A CR in Project Speak is basically a signed document, shifting scope, cost, or timeline. This one retroactively claimed the client had agreed to cut the testing phase months earlier. It was dated, signed, or rather it looked signed by a client rep I knew personally. The signature was off, too clean, like it had been lifted from another document. My stomach turned. If that CR stuck, it meant every bug, every crash, every failure in production would land on us. Diane would say, "See? I had client approval. My team just failed execution." I confronted her in the hallway. "Where did this signature come from?" She didn't even flinch. "From the client. Why? Are you suggesting otherwise?" It wasn't a question, it was a warning. That night, my coworker pulled me aside. "She's not just rewriting history. She's setting you up. You're the lead analyst. Your name is on those test plans. When it blows up, you'll be the fall guy." I laughed it off, but it wasn't real laughter. My gut knew he was right. I just didn't know how close we were to the edge. The days blurred into a haze of deadlines and mounting dread. Diane grew bolder. She cut direct communication with the client, insisting all updates go through her. She misplaced JIRA tickets that showed missed dependencies. She even edited shared spreadsheets, deleting my comments, then accused me of failing to track risks. By the time the next executive status meeting rolled around, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. My slides were prepped, my data airtight, but I knew Diane had something planned. She looked too calm, too smug, like a magician about to reveal the final trick. And that's when my coworker whispered those words, "Leave now. Don't say a word. At the time, I didn't know why, but the trap wasn't theoretical anymore. It was about to snap shut, and I was the bait. When he whispered those words, "Leave now. Don't say a word," it didn't feel like advice. It felt like a command. My coworker wasn't the kind of man who wasted breath. He measured everything he said like words cost him money. So when he broke his silence, when he ordered me to move, something in my body obeyed before my brain could argue. I walked out of that glass-walled conference room, laptop under my arm, heart hammering loud enough to drown out the chatter of executives filing in behind me. No one tried to stop me. No one even noticed. That was the worst part. It was like I was invisible, walking straight past the guillotine before the blade dropped. The hallway felt endless. My shoes echoed against the marble floor. I remember glancing back once. He was still there, leaning against the wall like he belonged, like nothing was wrong. His eyes flicked toward me just once, then away, as if to say, "Keep going. Don't look back." I left the building. The spring air hit me like a slap. Too bright, too warm, too normal. My car was parked at the far end of the lot, and every step felt like I was moving through water. Part of me wanted to turn around, storm back inside, and demand to know what the hell was happening. Another part, the smarter part, kept moving. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I froze. Then a second buzz. Text message. Do not answer calls. Do not open email. Meet me in 30. Neutral place. Sending location. Neutral place? What the hell did that mean? The location came through. A coffee shop 2 blocks away. Not one of our usual spots. Not anywhere near the office. Just a plain, anonymous cafe tucked between a laundromat and a vape store. I drove there on autopilot, checking the rearview mirror every 2 seconds, like I was in some kind of spy movie. When I got there, he was already waiting. Not inside. Outside on the patio, back to the wall, eyes scanning the street. He had a manila envelope on the table. Not a laptop, not a phone. Just that envelope and a paper cup of coffee he hadn't touched. "Sit," he said. I sat. My hands were shaking. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." Inside were printouts, emails, Jira exports, screenshots of shared drive edits, time-stamped logs. At first, it looked like chaos. Then the pattern hit me. Diane's edits, Diane's deletions, Diane's late-night emails, backdated CR drafts, signatures pasted from other contracts. "She's building a case," he said quietly. "Not against the project, against you." I felt my stomach flip. "Me? You're lead analyst. Your name's on the test plans. She's going to pin every missed dependency, every skipped regression, every budget overrun on you. She'll say you hid it. She'll say you failed oversight, and she has just enough fake paper trail to make it look real." My throat went dry. So why warn me? Why not save yourself? For the first time, he cracked a smile. Small, bitter, because I'm in those logs too. I caught her edits. That makes me a liability, and Diane doesn't leave liabilities standing. He leaned in, lowering his voice even further. "In that meeting right now, she's presenting that backdated CR. She's waiting for you to confirm it. Once you nod, you're cooked. She'll pin the whole thing on you and walk away clean." I felt my skin go cold. "So if I'd stayed, you'd have signed your own termination letter," he said, with the client watching. I sat back, staring at the pile of paper between us. Proof. Evidence. Enough to sink her, or us if we handled it wrong. "What do we do?" I whispered. His answer was immediate. "We document. We back up everything she touched. We build a clean timeline, and then we go above her."
The words hit me like a hammer. Going above Diane was suicide. She had allies in every corner of the company. She was the kind of manager who made sure to befriend HR, legal, finance, anyone who could shield her. If we misstepped, we wouldn't just lose the project. We'd lose our careers. But he just stared at me, calm as ever. You trust me? I didn't want to. I didn't trust anyone. But I thought about that whisper in the hallway. About how, without it, I'd be sitting in that glass room right now, nodding along to my own execution. Yeah, I said finally. I trust you. He nodded once, like that was all he needed. Then he reached back into the envelope and pulled out a flash drive. This, he said, placing it on the table between us, is step 1.
The flash drive sat between us like a loaded weapon. I didn't touch it at first. My coworker, let's call him Ryan, just kept his hand on the envelope, watching me like he needed to know I was ready before we went further. Plug it in when you're alone, he said. Not on your work laptop, not on Wi-Fi. Air-gapped, if you can. Ryan, what the hell is this? He exhaled, the kind of breath you take when you're about to rip the bandage off. It's everything Diane doesn't want you to see, and some of it, well, once you've seen it, there's no unseeing it. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table with my old personal laptop. No internet, no phone nearby. Just me, the machine, and the drive. When I opened it, folders cascaded across the screen like a silent confession. Emails, Jira, exports, finance requests, change orders, screenshots, draft, disciplinary. My pulse spiked at that last one. Draft, disciplinary. I opened the screenshots first. Most were innocuous. Project dashboards, timelines, ticket comments. But in the corner of every one, timestamps glowed like neon. Edits at 2:17 a.m., deletions at 3:46, new versions uploaded at 4:02. Who works like that? Diane. She was rewriting history while the rest of us slept. One screenshot made me push back from the table. It was my own risk log, something I had updated religiously. In Diane's final version, entire rows were missing. Critical issues I had flagged. Gone. In their place, a neat little note, reviewed and cleared by my name. She was erasing problems, then signing my name to the erasure. The Jira exports were worse. Hundreds of tickets, closed out of sequence. Dependencies marked resolved weeks before they were even assigned. And in the comments, user IDs I didn't recognize. Burner accounts, maybe, leaving notes that magically aligned with Diane's narrative. Then I opened finance requests. Invoices I'd never seen. Cost savings applied to budgets that hadn't even been approved. And a forwarded email chain where Diane pitched to finance. If we can backdate approval on this CR, I can guarantee we'll meet the client's demands on paper. Analyst will confirm oversight. Analyst, that was me. But the knife in the gut was the draft disciplinary folder. There were 3 documents. Each one was a half-finished memo, all dated 2 weeks in the future. They read like prepared obituaries for my career. Failure to ensure quality assurance. Negligence in oversight of testing protocols. Breach of trust with client. And in bold at the bottom, recommendation. Termination of contract. I remember sitting there in my kitchen, the hum of the fridge the only sound, staring at my name typed out like it had already been decided. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't overthinking. Diane was building a case, line by line, with forged signatures, edited logs, and phantom approvals. Ryan hadn't been exaggerating. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A single message from him. "Do you see now?" I typed back with shaking fingers. "Yes." Seconds later, another message. "Then you know what's next. We back up everything. Tomorrow." I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those draft memos. My name etched into a future I hadn't even lived yet. Diane hadn't just set a trap. She'd already written the crime, the trial, and the verdict. All I had to do was walk into that conference room and confirm her lie, and the story would write itself. But Ryan had pulled me out. Now we had the truth. The question was, what the hell were we supposed to do with it? We didn't meet at the office. We didn't even risk a cafe. Ryan texted me an address I'd never been to. An old co-working space above a shuttered bookstore. The kind of place where the Wi-Fi had been cut off years ago, and the only sound was the creak of wooden floors under your weight. When I pushed open the door, the air smelled of dust and stale coffee. He was already there, hunched over a folding table, his laptop glowing faintly in the dim light. He didn't look up. "Close the door. Lock it." I did. My hands shook on the bolt. The table was covered in papers, drives, and 2 spiral notebooks filled with Ryan's handwriting. Meticulous lines of dates, times, cross-references. It looked less like project notes and more like trial prep. "We build the timeline tonight," he said flatly. "If we wait, she'll bury us." I slid into the chair across from him. "Ryan, this feels insane. We're not lawyers. We're not investigators. We're the only ones with proof," he cut in. "And if we don't make sense of it before she deletes it, it's gone forever." So we worked. For hours. We spread out Diane's doctored CRs against the real JIRA logs Ryan had archived. We matched timestamps down to the minute. Every time we found a gap, an edit here, a deleted row there, Ryan marked it in red pen, manipulated. At 1 a.m., he pulled up a string of emails. "Look at this," he said, sliding the printout toward me. The chain showed Diane pressing finance for retroactive approval, pushing them to backdate a budget shift. At the bottom, my name appeared in a forwarded note. "Analyst has already confirmed oversight." Except I hadn't. I slammed the paper down. "She's forging me. This is criminal." Ryan didn't even flinch. "Then we treat it like evidence." He held up a cheap USB recorder. "Every printout, every log, we catalog. No gaps. No missing links. If we screw up even one date, she'll say we fabricated it. Understand?" I nodded, throat tight. By 2 a.m., the table was chaos. Paper towers leaning like broken teeth, laptops running on fumes, empty water bottles littered across the floor. My eyes burned from scanning lines of code and timestamps, but the pattern was undeniable. Diane had built a false history, and we had the real one. The pressure was suffocating. Every time I glanced at my phone, I expected it to light up with a call from HR or IT, telling me I was locked out of the system. Every creak of the building made me think Diane herself was about to kick down the door. At one point, I just broke. I dropped my head into my hands. "Ryan, even if we have all this, what do we do? We're nobodies. She has connections in legal, in HR. She'll spin this before we can even show it." He leaned back, eyes bloodshot but steady. "That's why we go higher. Higher than her allies. Client side, maybe even board level. Once they see the paper trail, it won't matter who she knows." I shook my head. "If we go client first, the company will crucify us for going outside the chain. If we go internal, she'll smother it before it leaves the inbox." Ryan tapped the recorder. "That's why we make it airtight, a timeline no one can deny. Once we drop it, we don't ask permission. We make it impossible to ignore." The way he said it, it scared me, but it also lit a spark. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. We were building a case. By 3 a.m., the first draft of the timeline was pinned to the wall, with pushpins scavenged from an old corkboard. Dozens of sheets connected with red string, like some crime drama cliché. But looking at it all laid out, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't office politics. It was deliberate sabotage. Every missing test, every backdated approval, every forged signature, leading to one conclusion: me. At 4 a.m., Ryan closed his notebook with finality. "We have enough," he said. His voice was gravel, but there was conviction in it. "If she comes for us now, we can burn her down first." We sat there in silence, the weight of it pressing on us. I wanted to thank him, but the words stuck. Gratitude wasn't enough. Fear wasn't enough. What I felt was something deeper, a sick mix of relief and dread. Relief that I wasn't crazy. Dread that tomorrow, everything would change. When we finally left the building, dawn was breaking. The city looked the same, but I knew better. The trap Diane had set was real, but now so was our evidence. Ryan glanced at me as we stepped into the morning air. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we show them the truth. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. By the time the sun was up, I was running on caffeine, adrenaline, and raw nerves. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I buttoned my shirt, like I was walking into a courtroom instead of a client status call. In a way, I was. Ryan had been blunt. We don't wait for Diane to spin it. We go straight to the client. If they see the clean release and the evidence side by side, she won't be able to bury it. That was the plan. Terrifying, reckless, but airtight. When I walked into the client's conference suite, Diane was already there, perfectly composed, hair immaculate, voice warm as honey as she charmed the executives. The forged change request, the one that erased our testing phase, was neatly printed in a binder in front of her. She didn't even glance my way when I sat down. To her, I was already dead weight. The VP of Operations cleared his throat. "Let's get this moving. Diane, walk us through where we stand." She smiled, flipping open the binder. "Of course. As you'll see, the client approved streamlined testing months ago, which explains the accelerated delivery schedule." My pulse roared in my ears. I could see the forged signature staring up from the page like a death sentence. I had maybe 30 seconds before she called on me to confirm. And then Ryan moved. He stood, casual but steady, and slid a USB drive across the polished table toward the client sponsor. "Before we proceed, you should see this. It's the unedited release build, fully regression tested with logs to prove it. You'll notice the dates don't align with the change request Diane just presented." The room froze. The sponsor frowned, plugging the drive into his laptop. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the projector. Then the demo loaded. Our stable release. Clean. Functional. Everything Diane's version claimed couldn't exist. "Wait a second," the sponsor muttered, scrolling through the logs. This show's testing was intact. Dependencies cleared. Regression completed. But that's not what your change request says." He looked up, eyes narrowing at Diane. "So which is it?" For the first time, I saw Diane's mask slip, just for a heartbeat. Her smile faltered, her fingers tightened on the binder, and her eyes flicked, just briefly toward me. "This must be a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Old data, perhaps. The analyst hasn't been consistent with record keeping." "Not true." My voice came out stronger than I expected, cutting across the table. "The logs are untouched. The CR was altered, and I can prove it." Ryan pushed a second folder forward. Inside were printouts of Diane's midnight edits, side by side with the originals. Red annotations highlighted every deletion, every forged line. At the bottom, my name, falsely signed off. The sponsor leaned back, jaw tight. "Diane, did you fabricate client approval?" Of course not," she stammered. "This is being taken out of context. We were under pressure. Everyone agreed." "No," I said firmly. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. "No one agreed. You manufactured approval that didn't exist. You cut testing phases without authorization, and you prepared disciplinary drafts to pin it all on me." That landed like a hammer. Gasps echoed around the table. The VP's face turned stony. "This is serious," he said finally. "We'll need legal to review everything, effective immediately." He gathered the binder, the logs, the drive, and handed them to his assistant. "Chain of custody starts now." Diane opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once, she had no script. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Executives murmuring, the sponsor pacing, assistants typing furiously. Ryan and I sat in silence, side by side, like soldiers who just fired their last bullets. When it was over, the VP dismissed everyone with a curt nod. "We'll investigate. Until then, no further project decisions are to be made without clearance. Diane, that includes you." Her face went pale. We walked out into the hallway. My legs felt like jelly, but my chest was lighter than it had been in weeks. Ryan gave me the faintest smirk. "Told you we'd show them the truth?" I wanted to laugh, or cry, or collapse. Instead, I just nodded. For the first time, Diane wasn't the one controlling the narrative, and for the first time, I believed we might actually survive this. The silence after that meeting didn't feel like relief. It felt like the calm before an artillery strike. By the next morning, the project wasn't just paused for a review, it was under full-blown internal audit. That meant every email, every ticket, every cost request Diane had touched was being pulled into legal's chain of custody, the kind of process you can't charm or spin. Once the auditors sink their teeth in, the truth bleeds out whether you like it or not. Ryan and I were told to keep working, but separately from Diane. We were placed under direct supervision of the VP, reporting daily on progress. It was awkward, surreal, like suddenly being lifted out of quicksand and dropped onto solid ground. Diane, meanwhile, was a ghost. Her office door stayed shut. When she did appear, it was in frantic bursts. Phone pressed to her ear, lips tight, whispering into the receiver before slamming the door again. Gone was the confident manager who strutted through halls. Now she looked hunted, and the audit was relentless. Day 1. Auditors discovered the backdated change request didn't match client communications. The signature Diane claimed was authentic turned out to be a copy-paste from an unrelated contract. Not even a good one. The metadata still showed the original file name. Day 2. Finance confirmed she had requested retroactive budget shifts without client approval. In one case, she had literally fabricated an invoice. Day 3. It pulled log histories and found her late-night edits. JIRA tickets closed out of order. Dependencies marked, resolved before they were created. Her fingerprints were everywhere. The investigation spread fast. HR was dragged in, then compliance. By the end of the week, she was on leave pending outcome, which everyone knew was corporate code for dead woman walking. But the wildest part wasn't watching Diane unravel. It was watching the company turn. All those allies she'd cultivated, finance, HR, even her so-called mentors, vanished. Nobody wanted to be associated with her now. People avoided eye contact in hallways, deleted her from email chains, whispered her name like it was contagious. Meanwhile, the client, furious but strangely supportive, backed Ryan and me. They praised the clean release we'd preserved, the documented timeline we'd built. It wasn't just that we'd saved the project. It was that we'd exposed the sabotage before it destroyed them too. For once, the narrative wasn't hers. It was ours. But I won't lie. It wasn't satisfying right away. It was terrifying. Because while the walls were closing in on Diane, I couldn't shake the paranoia that she might lash out one last time. She had power, access, friends in high places, and people like her don't go quietly. Then came the hearing. I wasn't in the room, but word spread fast. Diane tried to argue that the edits were best practice, that the CR was aligned with client intent, that she had been misled by subordinates. And then, of course, she tried to drop my name. Except this time, Ryan and I had the receipts. The auditors rolled out side-by-side logs, timestamps, emails. They showed how she deleted risk flags I had raised. They showed the disciplinary drafts naming me, created on her laptop with her login, at times when I wasn't even online. They showed the forged signature, the mismatched metadata, the ghost accounts she'd used to manipulate JIRA. Her defense collapsed in minutes. By the time it was over, Diane wasn't a manager or a mentor or even an employee. She was a liability. Termination for cause was immediate. Word rippled through the office like wildfire. The woman who had built her career on scapegoating others was finally caught in her own net. And suddenly, all those whispers of, "That's just how she is," turned into, "I always knew something was off. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel vindicated. I'd also be lying if I said I didn't feel sick." Watching someone lose everything, even someone who tried to ruin you, hits different when you've seen the draft memos with your name on them. Still, karma had finally shown up, and it hadn't come gently. Ryan and I walked out of the building that night in silence. Then he muttered, almost to himself, She wrote your obituary before you were even dead. Now she gets to live hers in real time. I don't respond. I didn't need to. Because he was right. The project didn't just survive, it thrived. With Diane gone, the suffocating tension lifted almost overnight. Decisions that used to take 3 meetings and a dozen alignment calls now happened in minutes. The client, once skeptical and frustrated, began to lean on us directly. For the first time in months, I felt like we weren't fighting against our own management. We were actually delivering. Ryan and I worked like men possessed. We took the clean release we'd preserved and built on it, stabilizing dependencies, closing gaps, and running full regression cycles without shortcuts. We brought in QA testers Diane had sidelined, and they practically cheered to finally be allowed to do their jobs properly. Within weeks, the system was humming. The client noticed. In the final delivery meeting, they weren't just satisfied. They were impressed. "This is what we wanted from the beginning," the sponsor said, shaking my hand firmly. "Reliable, tested, accountable. You saved us time, money, and a hell of a lot of grief." That contract? Renewed, and not just renewed, expanded. What had started as a $200,000 project grew into a multi-year partnership. And then came the shocker. The VP pulled me into his office. "We want you to lead this program going forward. Formal title, budget authority, final say on scope changes. You've earned it." I didn't know what to say. Months earlier, I'd been one signature away from losing everything. Now they were offering me leadership over the very project Diane tried to use as my grave. Ryan got his due too. The quiet man who had whispered those 4 words was promoted into a senior role, with a raise that finally reflected his worth. He didn't brag, didn't celebrate loudly, but I caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes when the announcement went out. And Diane? Her fall was brutal. Termination for cause meant no severance, no glowing reference, no cushy landing at a competitor. Worse, the audit findings triggered a review of her professional certifications. Rumor has it she lost them, at least temporarily. In our industry, that's a scarlet letter. Word spreads fast. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she's trying to claw her way back somewhere else. Maybe she's pretending none of it happened. But in our company, her name became shorthand for everything you don't do. A cautionary tale whispered in training rooms. Don't pull a Diane. As for me, I think about that moment often. The whisper in the hallway. The split-second decision to trust someone I barely knew. If I hadn't listened, if I'd stayed in that glass conference room, nodded along, signed where she wanted, I'd be gone. My career, my reputation, my future. All of it. Instead, I learned something I'll never forget. Survival isn't just about being the smartest or the hardest worker. Sometimes it's about knowing when to walk away. About listening when someone who sees more than you do says, "Leave now. Don't say a word." That whisper saved a project, saved a contract worth hundreds of thousands, and let's be honest, saved me. And in the end, karma did what it always does. It just needed a little help finding the right target.